And we are here to interview a legend, Melvin Steals. Of course, he and his brother, really epic as far as songwriters are concerned. Nominated for Grammys, a Grammy winner, and a cavalcade of stars that they have worked with. And we would be here all night. But of course, could it be I'm Falling in Love? The Spinners, one of my all-time favorites. Different lead singers, different era, different period, but in the 70s, make no mistake about it, that song and Rubber Band Man dominated and made them into the superstar group that they remain until this day. But your family, your mom, your brother, she said, look, you two got to come back home. You got to do something else. You become a great school teacher. He becomes a carpenter. Moms always know best. My mom was saying, no matter how much they pay you, get out there and keep working. It'll pay off. It'll pay off. And it eventually did. But do you ever regret taking your foot off the pedal after having so much success?
What do you mean?
Decided to come back, as opposed to staying the course and just trying to grind it out in music.
So what I found out is, I had to make a choice. Do I want to be in the record business full time, or do I want to put my family first?
Smart.
And some of the things I saw happen in that business would have had an adverse effect on my family. Gamble and Huff wanted us...
in Philadelphia.
They wanted us to move to Philadelphia. And my wife's mother said something to me that gave me pause. And so we decided that we didn't want to move to Philadelphia. And because we wouldn't move to Philadelphia, then we were not able to work with that Mighty 3 music. They wanted us to sign a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And after we had a song of that magnitude, to sign a contract like they wanted us to sign didn't seem to something that we deserved.
Listen, I don't need these notes. I only made a few notes just to let people understand how significant he and his brother are to music, not just in this region, but an entire sound that came out of Philadelphia that I'm a huge fan of. So now that the beginnings have started with this incredible talent, we're just going to throw caution to the wind, and we're going to talk about everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the music industry back in the day and at all times has had some very dark sides to it, tough sides, rough sides. I've met many people in the industry, and it isn't all good. So the decision that he and his brother made because of their mother, probably the best decision they ever made, but it's still a great business, but obviously it can be a tough business, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But before we go any further, a couple of things. Could It Be I'm Falling in Love? The Stylistics, former lead singer, great talent. They have just dropped the cover version of that. So tell everybody about that, then we'll move on.
Okay, about 3 years ago, I was in a recording studio named Morning Star in Norristown.
Right.
And we were working on a project, and we went over there. Russell Tompkins happened to be in the studio working on a project with some other people that he knew in the area, and we just happened to meet. And I was amazed to find out just how friendly and open he was. And all those years I had never met Russell until 3 years ago. And he liked our songs so well that he agreed to work with us and we produced 5 recordings on him. And when I say we, I mean my twin brother Melvin, and we have a partner by the name of McKinley Jackson.
Okay.
McKinley Jackson was Marvin Gaye's last musical director.
Right.
And we met McKinley around 1975, 76 in Henry Allen's office at Atlantic Records when Henry was looking for songs for the Impressions.
Curtis Mayfield.
Well, minus Curtis Mayfield. And at that time, there were 4 guys. And McKinley came in, and we were waiting for Al Bell to come in. He was going to be the producer, and we were sitting around the table with the Impressions and McKinley and my brother and me and Henry. And Al Bell, for some mysterious reason, never showed up. So McKinley got the job to be the producer in addition to being the arranger. And they flew us out to California, and we got to know McKinley very well. And we met Ray Parker Jr. played on it. Gatson, that drummer, like Earl Young is on the East Coast, he was on the West Coast. Right. Rittenauer, the guitar player.
Right.
Yeah, it was great.
You're just throwing me all kinds of softballs here. You realize that. This is all in my wheelhouse. And listen, I love Smokey, Motown, but what I got to ask you is, why is it that Gamble and Huff and that Philadelphia sound and Harold Melvin and my favorite of all time, Teddy Pendergrass, and we're going to talk about him in a minute, why were they never able to duplicate that machine that Berry Gordy had? They did pretty well, but what was it about Berry Gordy and Smokey, how they were able to crank out so many hits? I mean, from a guy who made his living doing it as good as anybody. How did they do that?
It's the combination of the people, the right people. If you bring gifted and talented people together and challenge them, like Berry Gordy challenged them.
He did challenge them.
And they rose. They met the challenge and created that sound. Philadelphia is different from what I saw with Gamble and Huff. They wrote good songs, but when they came into the studio, those musicians infused something in the music that took it to a whole nother level. What's the Jagger song? I'm tired of chasing you, girl. When I heard it in the office in the Schubert building, to me it sounded like a very trite song. But when they got on the floor of the studio,
magic.
And those musicians like Roland Chambers, Norman Harris, Ronnie Baker, Roland had a brother named Carl Chambers that played the drums. Carl, Roland, Tom Bell, and a guy named Winnie, a bass player from New Orleans. That was the rhythm section. And when they started contributing to the music, it took the songs to a whole nother level.
All right, just a name drop briefly, because so much I want to get to. Melvin Steals is here. Never Stop Loving You, the new collaboration. Hermie Granati recorded here in David Granati's studio. Jimmy Ross and him, I heard it earlier today. It will have chills running up and down your spine. The harmony, it's absolutely incredible. And that hook right off the top, kind of like Could It Be I'm Falling in Love, just takes you right in. But Gloria Gaynor, I mean, just Archie Bell and the Drells. I mean, we're going from one decade to the other. You guys just steamrolled. You think about all the people that you worked with in your time. First Choice, Ecstasy. These are names that I remember out of my past. And obviously with what you did with, the Spinners. But then the Jaggers, Together Forever, Forever Together. Gotta Find My Way Back Home, which sold 100,000 copies. You had an incredible ride. And when I think of you and your brother, honestly, I think of Henry Mancini. I think of so many great songwriters that are from right here in this region.
Yes, very talented people.
Well, as you are. And having the opportunity to have the greatest and I think most important job in the country, being a school teacher, you have had an incredible life, have you not?
I've lived in two worlds.
Exactly. Who does that? And you get to write this huge song because of the love of your wife who happens to be hanging out with us here tonight. I mean, I can't tell you how much it means to me to have this opportunity to interview you. Now, the latest version of Could It Be I'm Falling in Love. How can people hear that?
It's on all of the platforms.
Everywhere.
Spotify, everywhere. It's all over the world. It's, Russell has a new album called Riding Solo.
Came out in February.
Yeah. And it was produced by Preston Glass, who is a protege of Tom Bell, who Tom Bell discovered when he was 16 years old. And when he was 18, he was going to move to Philadelphia, and that's when Tom Bell said, "You stay on the West Coast," and Tom Bell migrated to Seattle. And he, just taught Preston so much, and Preston reached out to us because he and Russell go way back, and he's done other things with Russell, and he asked us if we would be open to putting 3 of our songs on that album, which we did, and it's wonderful to encounter a person like Russell Tompkins.
By chance.
Yeah, by chance, but his personality. I can remember one group in Philadelphia, I won't say which group, but there was a singing group. The lead singer said, "You songwriters should pay me."
To perform your song?
Yeah.
Come on now. Without my song, what do you have?
He was that arrogant.
He didn't last very long, did he?
They went up the charts. They went all the way up to #1 on Billboard.
I think I knew who you're talking about.
And I saw them going up, and they were coming down, and they didn't know.
Excuse me, remember? But listen, I got to talk about Teddy Pendergrass on the heels of what you were just saying. And how he tried to break away from Harold Melvin. And how it got a little rough at times.
It got rough, yeah.
I love Teddy Pendergrass. You have to understand, there are certain people that move me to this day. James Brown, first album I ever bought. The whole horn thing, that's where it happened. Motown growing up, obviously with you and your brother. So much of that Philadelphia sound. But Teddy Pendergrass, in my opinion, and kind of what happened sadly to Curtis Mayfield, he gets injured, becomes a paraplegic, and sadly the same thing happened to Teddy Pendergrass. But you being the guy, was Teddy Pendergrass as good live as he was on vinyl? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
man, Melvin, he was, still is, he's incredible, that guy.
Yeah,
What happened between him and Harold? Wanted control. And from what I used to hear, Harold even hid the money under the mattress. He was old school. And he could get a little rough at times because that's the way he grew up. But he just would not let his former drummer, who really, I remember watching him with Don Cornelius on Soul Train so many times. Harold Melvin, they were catapulted to Blue Notes because of what Teddy Pendergrass did out
he
front.
could sing, yeah.
He didn't embrace it though. Why didn't he just let him do what he wanted to do? It was like he had this hook in him and he didn't want him to go.
Back in the day,
Just tell me.
there were 2 types of people in the record business.
Say it.
Pimps
Right?
and prostitutes.
Right?
And if you didn't roll with them,
They rolled against
they
you.
rolled over you.
Better analogy.
For example, we were never given another opportunity to write a song for the Spinners. Never.
After having that massive hit.
After we had that massive hit, we were never given another opportunity.
Well, how is it that the Jaggers have The Rapper, a smash hit? How is it they never get a shot to get another #1 hit? Could it be maybe, I'm just hypothetical here, they decided to push someone else a little bit more, maybe because of their race?
I don't know. I know at the time they were hitting, that's Curtis Mayfield's.
Right. Of the Impressions went on his own, Pusher Man, great musician.
He had
Great
that Kurt Tom was there too.
Right, right.
My brother and I used to record for Curtis Mayfield. We
Right.
made a record with him, but he might, something I heard, something that he wanted.
Soul promotion. He wanted to be the guy. And
Yeah.
nobody else on the label. So let me ask you, so the Jaggers come along in the 60s. This is just my thought process. And then you have 2 white guys, John Oates, who's going to be in town, Daryl Hall and John Oates, come along in the 70s, and it takes them a while. But then the 80s, they dominated. They had like a dozen #1 hits. So that blue-eyed soul sound, you realize you're responsible for all of that too.
What's the one with the blonde hair?
Daryl Hall.
I saw Daryl Hall.
Tremendous talent.
We were in the studio at Sigma Sound, and there was this white piano player. They called him Cotton.
Call him what?
Cotton.
Oh, Cotton, okay.
Oh, God, he was good.
He was great.
And I saw the gentleman you just
Daryl
named,
Hall.
come into the studio. Did you know that he was one time on Gamble's payroll? He was a songwriter for Mighty Three.
Daryl Hall.
Yeah.
The industry today, it's still about telling a story. They're still doing it. But these artists are having a chance that artists like you never really had. So people have learned for the better, have they not, in the industry, especially the artists and the songwriters?
Right.
And people are getting paid now, correct?
Well, yeah, they're more knowledgeable. I didn't know anything about how that operated. The very first song that my brother and I wrote was a song called I'm Not Strong Enough by the Four Perfections. And I didn't find out until about 10 years ago. My wife Adrena went on the internet and I discovered that I'm Not Strong Enough was a huge hit in England. In 2014, a gentleman in England called contacted my daughter Chelsea on Facebook and asked her if she was related to me. She said, yes, that's my dad. And he called me from Spain. He wrote a book about the Philly sound.
The great Philly sound.
And he interviewed me, and there's like 9 pages in that book on the Steals brothers. And then he asked me if I could put the group back together, which I did. And they flew us to England. But I told them on the phone, I said, if Dr. Steals' wife doesn't get on the plane, Dr. Steals is not going to get on the plane.
Is she the reason you wrote Could It Be I'm Falling in Love, your wife?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, what happened was, it's a great producer out of Philly, Billy Jackson, produced The Times.
Oh, wow.
And Paul, is it Aleka? No. There was a studio in the early 1970s called Steel City in East Liberty. And they were doing a lot of cutting, and Phyllis Hyman was there.
What a talent.
And Columbia sent those 2 guys down to Steel City to listen to all of the things that they had done. And they only liked 7 songs. And all 7 songs were written by the Steals brothers. So we had a conversation with them. And Billy Jackson said, I need a song for Peaches and Herb. And at the same time...
The reunited Peaches and Herb.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the same time, when I was in college, one of my new frat brothers, I found out that his cousin was Tammy Terrell.
Of Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell.
So I said, you got to hook a brother up.
Right? Like right now.
Yeah, and he did. And my brother and I went to her. She was going through those operations.
She passed away, sadly.
And we went to see her while she was recovering. She was in a nightgown, and we auditioned for her in her bedroom. And she loved us. And she said, whatever you do, don't go to Motown. And she sent us to someone up in New York. That's another story. But we thought either Peaches and Herb could sing Could It Be I'm Falling in Love, or Marvin and Tammy could sing. But she passed away. But we wrote the song, and Billy Jackson played it for Peaches and Herb. And the word we got back was they could write a better song.
Listen, I love Philly. From cheesesteaks to all the sports teams. I don't know. There's something about it. That Philly sound still makes my heart skip a beat. But I got to talk about one other person. Very first song I ever slow danced to. Still one of my favorites to this time. At 67 years of age, as it was in 1970. So you go to Cheney, an incredible, very well recognized black university, and you run into a guy by the name of Eddie Holman.
Yes.
Who performed Hey There Lonely Girl.
Right.
How in the world did you ever meet Eddie Holman, and did you ever think that that guy someday would be dominating the charts with one of the most powerful songs of that year that is still enabling him to go out at times for the last 30, 40 years and perform. Even if he does one song, that's how much clout that song has.
He works all the time.
Yeah.
I was in Detroit celebrating our 55th anniversary this past November, and we went to see Earl Young and the Tramps perform, but Eddie was on the show too, so we always like the Philly reunion, because Eddie took us into that studio, and it's just a wonderful thing to see how all of that evolved. My brother and I were there when that Philly sound
Was really kicking.
When it got started. We were there
In the beginning.
in the beginning. I can remember when Kenny Gamble and the Romeos came to Cheney State and played in our big gymnasium with Tom Bell and Roland and Carl Chambers and Winnie and Kenny singing there. And then a few years later, Tammy turned us on to a guy in New York named Don Gold. And we went to New York on 8th Avenue, and we auditioned for him, and he loved the songs, and he gave us a $50 bill. I never knew there was such a...
Listen, when I get to heaven, God willing, I want to see my family, but there's a couple of people that I'd like to run into. James Brown's one, but Aretha Franklin's right there, Tammy Terrell, Marvin Gaye, so many. Do you ever think we'll see that much talent in such a short period of time, from like say 62 to 72 or 82? I mean, I look at all of the rock bands. I look at rhythm and blues, soul, country music maybe. But when you think about Philadelphia and that drive to Detroit and sprinkle in Pittsburgh, man, it's going to be hard pressed to ever find that much talent that close together in that short period of time.
Yes, and when I think about Mervyn and me, I'll never forget the guy that Tammy sent us to in New York. We signed our lives away. Before she passed away, one of the things she did was to get us out of that contract. But around that time, he was going to send us checks. There were no checks. He said, the check is in the mail. He kept saying that.
You still getting some scratch though for Could It Be I'm Falling in Love?
Yeah.
Good. That's all I care about.
But this, we thought the mailman had stolen our checks.
Where's my money?
We're going to roll down on
I want my
the
money.
mailman.
Okay, I got to talk about this Jimmy Ross song. Now, Jimmy told me it took a couple of years to do this. David Granati, truly one of the best, obviously guitarist with his brothers. They're going to be out and about doing stuff. We'll tell you more about that as we move forward. But what he does here in Ambridge is incredible. If you're looking for a studio to do anything, he's got the ear, he's got the crew, he's got the talent. Never Stop Loving You, I heard it. It's remarkable. Hopefully the platforms will embrace it just as well as some of the other stuff that you've done. Talk about Jimmy Ross as a performer right now. Amazing.
In my estimation, Jimmy Ross is a timeless
He is. Melvin.
singer.
I remember him in the 70s with the Skyliners when I was working at the top of the mall. He hasn't lost anything.
And he makes the song his own. Like, here's a song. Never find me a girl.
I know what you're talking about.
I used to sing that when I was in college, with the bands I sang with. But I heard his version of that. Takes it to another level.
Gonna Find My Way Back Home. Great song. I mean, just still brings chills up and down the spine and a tear to the eye. I love it. But what you have been able to do in your life, now you have people like A$AP Rocky, who's married to Rihanna. A lot of respect for both. Love him. Mary J. Blige, who's I love her. Mary J. Blige. They're sampling a little bit.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? And is the check in the mail is what I want to know.
Well, I remember there's an artist named Chubb Rock.
Yeah.
Treat Him Right. And I was listening to it at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I heard him say, treat me right. That's a song. That's a chant that I created on the floor of Sigma Sound Studio when we wrote the song Love Thing for First Choice. And in the tag, we needed something to fill in, and that's when I created that. And so at 2 o'clock in the morning, when I heard that song somewhere around near the 90s, 9 o'clock in the morning, I called my Philadelphia lawyer. And so every time that song, I get paid.
Good.
So I that's another revenue song. Someone recently sent me something, someone else has taken something from that song. We got a Grammy for 10% because they took the track, the drum track from Love Thing and made that song. And so I got a Grammy award. That blindsided me. When they notified me on email, I thought somebody was trying to trick me out of some money. But it turned out to be the real thing.
Listen, you got to hustle or be hustled.
Yes. The one thing I learned in Philly when we were starving up in Winglehocking Terrace, success will not come to seek you out.
Gotta go get it.
You gotta go get it. And that's when we went down to Gamble and Huff. We got on the streetcar, the 23rd streetcar on Germantown Avenue. We got down to Broad and Ogons and got on the subway, and this cop looked at my brother and me, and I guess we looked like we were going to commit murder and mayhem, so he got on the train with us and rode all the way down to Center City. He walked out, we were going into the Schubert building, and he watched us go into the building just to make sure we were not going to rob him.
Do nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Before we go, Never Stop Loving You's out there. Obviously, Could It Be I'm Falling in Love. Really cool stuff. Remake of that. But when you think of this community, you think of your family, you think of your life and education, your brother, Maestro and Larry. I mean, what do you think about at this stage in your life? There's got to be like lightning bolts. There's so much to think about.
When I look back on my life and the experiences that I had in that Aliquippa school system, plus the experiences I had in the church. Both of my parents were part of the Great Migration.
Right.
And the stories, well, my father died when I was 5, but the stories...
What happened to him?
He had pancreatic cancer.
Ugh.
47. He only went to the 3rd grade.
Was he working in the mill at the time?
He worked in the mill, but he was into all kinds of stuff.
Making it work, hustling.
When I think about the house I grew up in, was born and raised in a white neighborhood in Aliquippa back in the 40s. And the house we grew up, whatever he was doing, but he passed away. And 2 weeks after he passed away, I became legally blind in my right eye from a self-inflicted wound. And I grew up poor.
What do you mean self-inflicted wound?
Back then, celery used to come with a red rubber band with the metal clip.
Right.
And I was 5 and I was playing with it.
Ah, it ricocheted home.
And I put it down in front of my face and you can see that white scar.
Oh, man.
And so my favorite fairy tale, I was the ugly duckling.
Yeah, but God gave you a voice.
And a couple, 10 years ago, I went to Idlewild Park and I saw a black swan. I never knew there was such a thing. And so for me, that I was that ugly duckling, and now a black swan, and I could see in Aliquippa the education. I got a world-class education.
I love Aliquippa.
I was identified as a National Merit Scholar. In 11th grade, I didn't know what that meant. But as I've gotten older, and that's why as a teacher, because of the teachers who taught me, who didn't look like me, they taught me so well that any student who sits in front of me, I want to give my students the same thing that my teachers gave me. And I'm Dr. Steals because one year I took a sabbatical. I had to come back because I wasn't successful. Drina used to get our kids on Sunday mornings while I was on sabbatical, and they would have a Bible study, and then they would hold hands and pray for that food. down the hall.
It must have
Put the
worked.
family. So then I went back and they changed my assignment from American literature with an anthology to American novel and gave me a room filled with blue chip football players. And to my horror, I discovered that they could not read. And that's when I went back to school and I put 3 great football players from Aliquippa in the summer program at Duquesne. All of them went to college.
You went to Pitt, Duquesne, Cheney State. You've done
I
so
went
much.
to Slippery Rock.
I know, so much in your lifetime. But you still, you got to be thinking about the future. You want to hold it one more time, that spot.
I want to do something with the music, and this song will give me an opportunity. But in Aliquippa, the town has changed. When I was growing up, the village was functioning at a high level. Now the village is dysfunctional. You don't have the family units. So,
But they are trying.
well, they are. And what we've done, some people, friends of mine, we're bringing a Boys and Girls Club.
Great idea. Great idea.
And we were going to have a program on May 4th featuring Russell Tompkins Jr., Jimmy Ross, and Johnny Angel and the Halos.
Jack Hunt.
Right, Jack. And we were going to raise money for the Boys and Girls Club. But recently, Russell lost his wife of over 50 years. So we're going to move it to November 16th. But we're going to put this event on, and if it's successful, we're going to do it annually to support this Boys and Girls Club, which is going to start in the high school building in the fall. And we're going to generate monies to build a freestanding structure that will give these kids the experience. One of my friends I went to Cheney with, a guy named Charlie Grantham, he's a great athlete in high school and college, and he worked his way up to where he became the president of the NBA Players Association. And he told me when he was a boy, his mother was a single parent. He lived in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And she told him, my job is to go down to this factory and make money to put a roof over our heads, clothing on our back, food on the table. Your job is to take care of you. By that I mean I don't ever want to have to leave my job.
Because you
To
did.
come up to the school because of something you did and cost me to lose money. And he said at 9 years old,
You got it.
he discovered the Boys and Girls Club. And he would have to walk several miles in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to get to that Boys and Girls Club. And he said because of that Boys and Girls Club, changed his life. Curtis Akins had played for Pitt. Same thing. His mother died when she was 24. She had 5 kids. His grandmother took them down to domestic relations to put them in foster care, and they wanted to split them up. And she took all 5 of her grandkids back home with her, quit her job, got on welfare, took care of her grandkids. And he said when he was 9, he went to a Boys and Girls Club looking for something with football, and that's where he discovered basketball. Changed their lives.
Listen, music to my ears, not just the music, but hearing you talk and tell this story. And I'm glad you did it with me. So it's an honor to have a chance to meet you.
My pleasure.
Hey, Melvin Steals, what a joy. It's your Pratt Pack back on the radio tomorrow morning, bright and early, right after CBS Radio News at 5 a.m. on KDKA. Good night. Have a great weekend, everybody.